really be great if people would actually come into the market center and say hi to us, so we actually get to know you a little better and see who you are. So this class, I'm gonna go over documents, all the different ones we have. Just kind of going line by line here to make things a little easier. So if you're representing a buyer or a tenant and they want to see a for sale by owner or for rent by owner, we have these authorization to show forms. So you would set, fill in the landlord name. There's one for rental and there's one for sale. So they're slightly different. But on here, you put in the landlord's name, you put in the property address. Your name goes here. If there's an agreed upon amount, it would go in here. And then these ask of who's going to be paying the commission, whether it's the landlord, whether it's the tenant, or if the landlord's going to pay you and the tenant's going to pay you. So basically a half a month each. And this is what you would bring with you on the rental side. And you put dates in here of when this agreement's good for. And that would go into your tenant packet. And then there's the one that we also have for sale, which is slightly different. You about the sale one. Here again, you'd have the seller's names, the property address, your name goes here. If there's agreed upon sale price, if the seller is willing to pay your commission, how much it's here. If they're not willing to pay your commission, you're gonna mark this box off instead. And again, you have dates in this range. So this is what you would have signed by a for sale by owner or for a rent by owner if you are bringing a client to them. I'm going to go to this one, our commission split form. It depends upon which listing agreement you're using. If you're using the NJMLS listing agreement, then you definitely need this, but we try to put it with all our forms. This is basically saying if the seller is giving out commission, how much of that commission is being given to the other agent. So you'd be writing 2%, 1% here, minus whatever your fee is. However, on a rental, if your landlord is not paying commission, then there is nothing to split. You need to be writing 0 here. And do not get offended when the tenant agent tells you that they are not paying you that fee. They actually do not have to. The state came out and said now that if you don't want to pay that fee to that listing agent, whether it's on a sale or a rental, you do not have to. So just know that is that. But remember, on a rental, if your landlord is not paying commission to you, which you really should be trying, you're getting your landlords to pay you your portion of the commission, your half, and only asking half from the tenant. New York City and the 5 boroughs just passed a law stating that the tenant is only allowed to pay their agent and not the landlord's agent. Don't be surprised if that comes over across the river anytime soon. So it's a good conversation to have with your listing agent, your landlords about that. What else do we have here? Lead safe disclosure. So for any house built prior to 78, we all know that the towns have the lead paint, or we have a lead paint law that has to be inspected by the landlord. This document you send out when you send your listing out to the landlords, letting them know about the law. I know there were things written in the chat recently how one town is like, yeah, we're not checking. But the reality is if you don't have that property checked and it is not recorded with the town, the landlord and the town can be fined from the state. Just know that. Nobody wants to receive a fine. Pay the $400 or whatever it is to get inspected. There's actually a certificate that they can pay. It's a little bit more money, but it's good for like numerous years where their tenants are coming in and out repeatedly. But this just notifies them of the lead paint law. I don't think people realize how serious this actually is. It's really for children. Every year, if you ever have kids, when they're going for their physical, one of the things that they're checked on their blood work is their lead levels. My friend was renting up in Rhode Island, and on her daughter's 3-year-old checkup, her lead levels came back through the roof. And it's because most children's mouths are even with windowsills, and they tend to put their mouth or their face or anything on that windowsill, and they will get lead poisoning. It's serious, and a lot of people just don't realize how serious it actually is. So make sure you're instructing to your landlords to get tested for lead paint, and you've got it there. Our permission to advertise form. So when you're taking a listing and the listing agreement states that this is gonna be advertised on realtor-based websites, like Realtor.com, the Z word, the bad word that is, the Z word, I'm not gonna say it.
Oh.
Yes. And any other realtor-based website. However, our permission to advertise is getting permission from your seller or your landlord to create marketing materials, whether it's flyers, it's to post on your social media, the brokerage websites, because there are times where some people don't want their stuff plastered out there. And if they don't want it out there, you would just write a text box in the envelope saying, seller wishes to not have their stuff advertised on social media, and they'll sign the form acknowledging that. But that's what this is about. You can also have your buyer sign this too. So if you're gonna do a just sold post on Instagram, buyers may not be as, it's usually the front of the house, but this might come up a bit and you don't want to get sued. It's basically what this is. Some of these are about just covering your rear end so you don't get sued by somebody. And it's also important to know these documents, so when you're sending out listing paperwork or any paperwork for the buyers, you know what you're talking about. I run the transaction business, and there's so many times where agents will be like, "Why is this there?" And I've literally gotten asked, "Why is this written in the contract?" And it's the state contract, and it's something I didn't write. I don't know. I didn't write it. You have to read it yourself. So like, they can get mad at me. It's fun.
Oh my god, this is so awesome.
Your eyelashes look fantastic. Okay. Your eyelashes.
Oh, thank you.
I'm looking at you. I'm like, ah. This is the state listing agreement. The state came out with one to make it easier for everybody instead of us doing 4 different listing agreements. Because as we know, in this office, we are at the rear end of Bergen County. You turn left, you're in Hudson County. You turn right, you're either Passaic or Essex County. So the state created one. Plus, on top of that, if you list on Bright MLS, Bright does not have a listing agreement because it's got 7 other states that use that MLS, and that shouldn't be part of New Jersey. That's my personal opinion. But on line 1, your seller's name their address, their phone number, their email. A lot of people leave a phone number off a listing agreement. And here's the reality. Your seller's phone number has to be on the listing agreement. That does not mean it's being published to the MLS, but it has to be on the listing agreement, because at any point in time, any of the MLSs can ask for this listing paperwork and call your seller to confirm that they wanted their house sold, that nothing was wrong. There are times where agents will be like, that was supposed to be my listing. They call and they complain and they need to find out what happened, so they have to call the sellers. The office name goes here, your name goes here, property address is here. Lot and block do need to be on here. Now, line 20, people see exclusive and they don't check this off. This does not mean office exclusive. This means exclusive right to sell or exclusive right to rent. So you want that checked off. If you checked off non-exclusive, that means any broker can bring a buyer or, whatever, and they'll get the full commission and you don't. So just be aware of that. Down here, you always want to check off dual disclose. Don't just check off seller or landlord's agent. You don't know if you're going to get a tenant. You don't know if you're going to get a buyer. Plus, on top of that, you don't know who's going to reach out to you just to see the home through any, whether it's your social media or realtor-based websites. Obviously, the listing dates go here. The sale line goes here. The lease line goes here. What MLSs you're putting it on. Now, in the envelope, there is a box here, an initial box pops up. It is shaded out. If it is not an office exclusive, you click on it, it'll be in blue. You can hit the delete key on your keyboard and delete it. I seem to, a lot of buyers, or not buyers, a lot of sellers are not paying attention and they're clicking on that box and they're signing it, not realizing that they're signing the office exclusive spot. So just make sure when it's in the envelope, if it's not an office exclusive, you hit delete on that so they don't accidentally sign it because you're putting it on the MLS. This means it's not going on the MLS right here. All these different boxes are just, is it going on the MLS? Are you doing it coming soon? Are you putting it for sale sign, open house? Are there any concessions? And concessions does not mean commission. In this case, let's just say your seller knows that the roof is in crappy shape and they're gonna be giving a $10,000 credit for it. Or there's something wrong that they know is gonna come up, they know they're gonna have to give a credit for, that's what a concession would be. They already know they're giving that credit. Here, these are boxes just asking, are you taking photo? Are you having someone take photos or video of the house? The next line is saying that the sellers will allow a buyer or tenant or buyer's agent to also take photos of the house. So when you walk into a property and you start videoing and taking pictures that you don't have listed, you actually don't have a right to do that.
Okay.
Yes, it's actually it's a violation
I
of
see.
I know. But if you personally, so like, let's just say, and that's the thing, because some people don't want the inside of their homes being plastered all over social media. Sometimes they don't want people knowing that their home is for sale, you know, like they've got things quiet. So if you happen to have a seller that does not want outside people taking videos and photos, my suggestion always is have a sign at your listing saying, please do not take videos and photos of inside of the house.
But that's another thing, how do I know? If they don't have this.
You're actually in violation there. Yep.
Well, how do I know?
I know. That's what you're not supposed to do it unless it's, you should be asking permission. Everybody should be asking permission if it's okay. This one just says, are we putting a lockbox on the property? Yes, no. Now, again, we have 3 categories here, exclusive, non-exclusive. Again, under exclusive agreement, that is where you're putting your commission amount. The non-exclusive, again, is if any brokerage can bring a buyer. So we're not even gonna touch that box. It's always gonna be blank. And the regardless box is whether a buyer comes on their own or not, are you gonna be paid the full commission or are you taking a reduced commission? So let's just say a buyer shows up, they don't want representation. They're gonna do it themselves and go just use a lawyer. So in this case, are you still taking the full 5% or you're gonna reduce it to 3 or 4 or
Well,
2.5 or whatever? That's a per case scenario. I mean, a lot of agents leave it the same, or they'll reduce it to 4%, or I don't know what your commission is. It depends upon obviously what your commission is. I mean, if the seller's only giving out 3, then just keep your 3.
Yeah.
That's really up to you. Now for the lease, in this top box, it says the term of this agreement is paid by the seller or landlord shall pay the broker. You write half month on here, that means your landlord is paying you half month commission. If your landlord is not paying commission, you're going to rate 0. Because that means the landlord's not paying you, and then you take the risk of not having the tenant agent pay you, the tenants pay you. Again, this is
Okay, so I'm sorry, so if the landlord is not paying you and the tenant is not paying, who's paying you?
Absolutely, which is why you need to be making sure that the landlord should be paying half a month. We are the only area of the country that forces the tenant to pay. The rest of the country, landlords pay commission. Or the landlord pays half the month and the tenant pays half the month to their agent. We force the tenant to pay a full month, and in this market, which is the law that was just passed in New York, the tenant agent is, and the 5 boroughs, the tenant agent, the tenant itself is only responsible to pay their agent. They are not responsible to pay the listing agent.
Okay, so what about if I have a listing and I also get the tenant? They both pay me.
Well, that's why you write on your agreements. But I'm gonna go over the exclusive agency agreement on the tenant side, because everyone's kind of funny. Protection period, you only write in this box. Listing expires. If it does not get relisted by somebody else, you'll put days in here. Let's just say you're gonna stick 90 days in here. So if it doesn't get relisted and a buyer who previously saw the house now decides to come back and buy it, this means you're still due commission in that 90-day period. Again, your commission split goes here, 2%. This is what you're giving out. So you're taking a 5% commission and giving out 2.5, it's 2.5 minus your fee. Do not call it an MLS fee, it is a fee. And the state also just said that if a buyer's agent or a tenant agent doesn't want to pay your fee, guess what? They do not have to. So it would just be the flat commission. Again, we're the only state that actually does that. It's not done in other states. New York It's a flat percent and that's it. These boxes ask if the seller is going to cooperate for commission. Yes, no. Down here, is the seller gonna authorize you to tell other agents what the commission is? Yes or no? So let's just say your seller is offering out commission, but they don't want the other agent to know. They just wanna see what comes in on the agreement. Because let's just say they initially wrote 2%. And an agent comes in at 2.5%. You can have one agent come in with 2% and their client wrote an offer for 10,000 over asking. Or you can have another agent who writes 2.5%, yet their client came in over 50,000 over asking. Reality is, even the seller paying out that extra 0.5%, they've made more money on the client offering 50,000 than the 10,000. So that's why sometimes they'll want to see what comes in. And they have every right to, but they know at least they're paying out 2%, or whatever that agreement is that you have on there. Also, the other big thing I noticed is that, where is it? I see it more on the exclusive agency form. And here's where you'd write no commission, yes commission, what the percent is. These boxes down here, is it bank owned? Yes or no. Third party? Yes or no. Short sale? Yes or no. Condo? This condo, it's for condos and co-ops. That is only for a sale. So if you're doing a rental, they're all no. Please make sure these boxes are checked off. They're not much there to like, hey, we're here. Like, make sure they're checked off. They're there for a reason. People totally ignore them.
I have to print that and read it and go.
Yes, you all should. And this gets signed by the broker. The broker, guys. The broker and seller and landlord. It is automatically tagged to Joyce to sign. Closing that out. I'm going to open a document that is. Do I have the tenant agency? Yes, I do. I'm opening the exclusive tenant agency document. Because this drives me nuts. I see people do this all the time on here, and you're doing things wrong. Okay, so the tenant's name, the office name, your name. If you're showing them a single property, write the single property on here. If it's a town, a county, whatever, write whatever in there. Choose dual, again, when you're showing tenants, you're supposed to be having these things filled out before you walk through the door with them. They're making an appointment, so sometimes if you just want to write it from one property, you can write it from one property. You leave it for like a week for that one property, because usually people make decisions fairly fast on, rentals. But make sure this is filled out, and then you would write, click on tenant and dual disclosed. My biggest gripe with agents, again, time period goes on here. It starts today. You're doing it for a week because we know we send an application today, but it takes them 3 days to fill it out, because that's just how they work. But down, you don't take retainer fees. In this percent box, I see a lot of agents, and I'm not saying it's anyone in particular that's on Zoom or here, but I see it across the board in 3 different offices when I'm checking compliance. I see people write 0.5%. That is not 50%. That is 0.5%.
I write others and then
That's fine.
1 month.
But you guys are right. A lot of people are paying 0.5%. You're literally writing that you're going to take 0.5% commission, not 50%. You'd write 50 in there if you want 50, because the percent sign's already there. However, what I personally suggest to agents is clicking on this other box and writing half month or 1 month. You really should not be putting a dollar amount in here. Because let's just say you've got a tenant that's applying for a place that's not your listing, and the rent is $2,000. You stick $2,000 in here, and 4 other people apply to that complex or that place, and they got denied. And now you're going into another unit that's $2,100. The amount that you can be paid on that rental is $2,000. So it's best to write half month or 1 month on there. It covers your rear end.
Oh, I did something right. Because that's the thing.
Now, like if you're at a big complex too, like I'm helping an agent with the paperwork on a rental complex that's, whatchamacallit, the landlord's paying commission. So in this box, all I'm writing is half a month. Because I'm only worried about the tenant agent because the landlord is paying the other side, so I'm not writing a full month because the listing agent has their agreement with them to pay them. So if it's anything like that, you would write half month and then that's what, because that's what you're physically being paid as the tenant agent, half month. And then what you're doing also is checking off this box down here that says include any offer that the landlord is gonna pay the broker's commission. Now I'm gonna show you something. Everyone misses this. Line 51 and 52, it says commission includes all payments to broker for brokerage services provided under this agreement, including but not limited to payments from tenant, landlord, or third party. So basically it states already that the tenant, the landlord, or a third party can pay commission. Doesn't necessarily mean the tenant is paying commission or the seller is paying, the buyer is paying commission. It can come from any of these parties. So please stop writing seller pays commission. It is not allowed on these documents. I will reject it. It's been nearly a year. I think we all need to get this up in our heads. Again, these things need to be technically signed before you walk through a door with anybody on the buyer side or the seller side. The state has already gone around to offices, randomly chosen files, and said, let me see when the contract is done. All right, contract was signed today at 3 p.m. Let me see the exclusive buyer agency agreement. Oh, lo and behold, it was signed today at 3 p.m., which means they didn't get it signed before they walked through that door. And now that agent receives a $22,000 fine. $22,000. That's a whole lot of money.
It is.
And it doesn't go to the office, it's directly to you. So it's all on your rear end. So please be careful with the exclusive agency agreements. Make sure you're getting them signed. Also be aware if you're working with buyers when your agreement expires, because if your agreement expires, you do need to redo your agreement with them. Like I have an agent that I wrote an agreement for, and it expires in 2 weeks. So I already looked today, we wrote an offer, hopefully this one will get accepted. But if it doesn't, I need to make him aware that the agreement expires in 2 weeks, so before he takes them back out, we need to write another agreement that goes further out. So that's that one. Flood notice. This has been in effect since March of last year. Guys, I don't understand, if you use zip forms attaches this to the lease, and it doesn't make any sense because this form needs to be filled out and questions answered by the landlord before the tenant even applies. So I don't understand why zip forms attach this to the lease, because at that point it's too late. It is actually required to be put on the MLS by Hudson County. So if you're looking at Hudson MLS will fine you if this is not on their MLS. Like NJ only fines you if the lead paint's on there, but this and the seller's disclosure, if they're not on there, Hudson MLS will fine you. But again, the landlord needs to answer these questions, not you. This is just like the seller's disclosure. You should not be answering these questions. Because, I mean, you can direct them where to find the information if their house is in a 100 or 500-year flood zone. But number 3 asks if the parking has flooded. You don't know if the parking has ever flooded. You don't know if there's like Sandy, Irene, look at some other stuff that's gone on lately. We've had the flash floods and like Plainfield was underwater. So you should not be answering those questions. Lead paint. This also kind of blows my mind, this document, when people, if you're on the listing side, please make sure, whether it's the landlord, leases or sale. Again, these are different documents for lease and sale. It actually tells you up top. But make sure your sellers or landlords answer these questions. This top portion is the same. However, the bottom portion is what is different. This down here doesn't exist on the lease. But I can't tell you how many times people are on the listing side and they receive the lead paint back from the tenant agent and the tenant has not initialed A or B. They need to be initialed. It is not your fault that they may not have provided the lead paint from your family. Document. And again, on C, the buyer or somebody needs to be checking off one of these 2 boxes, whether the buyer is taking the 10-day period to inspect for lead paint or if they're waiving the opportunity. Personally, I always check off the box if they're taking the 10-day period because they still have it. It's written to the contract anyway. Whether they inspect for it or not, that is up to them, but I don't take that opportunity away from them. You never know. And then again, make sure everything is initialed. Everything is initials, check marks. I see X's, I see them blank. X's are not initials. It literally states purchaser's acknowledgement, initial are the words right there. And then I see X's. That's not an initial. Again, I'm not blaming any of you guys, just be aware of these things. Or even when you're on putting in an offer and you're pulling this document and you see things are incorrect or not filled out properly on here. I generally will not have a buyer sign it until it is filled out properly. And I will, when I'm sending the offer in, I note that, hey, the lead paint form is not completed or is not filled out and not filled initial, not marked by the sellers. And that it won't be completed until that is properly filled out. Cause let me tell you, if the lender gets this document and it's not filled out properly, do you wanna know what they do? They take another lead paint form and stick it in the closing package and make the sellers and buyers fill it out then. This isn't just a state document, this is a federal. This goes across the country, lead paint, and has nothing to do with just New Jersey. It's the whole country. I mean, we're an old country, not as old as some other ones, but we're old enough. What other forms do we have here? Let's say open house. They came out with a new contract, but I think everyone's pretty familiar with the contract itself. It just has the new notes in it about we no longer can call it a mansion tax. It is now the graduated percent tax. We're gonna go over that again, I think, the next team rally. So if you weren't able to come to this past one, we have the next one you can come to. That'll be gone over and you can use the Palm One app. And I think Ryan will be going over it there. What other documents do we have? Does anybody have any questions about documents in particular? No idea. Okay.
Is anyone?
Yeah, they're there.
Oh.
No questions. Do you have any questions on any particular document? No. Okay, so I'm gonna click on New Jersey Association, the NJAR folder. In here are all our state documents. There's different dual agency forms for buyer, seller, landlord, tenant. I really wish they would have just made a buyer tenant one and a landlord seller one. Why we have four, I have no idea. If you're ever looking for your condo form, it is in here, Condominium Homeowners Association. This is a document I tend to send the sellers at time of listing because it asks on there, who's the management company, what's their phone number, what's the amount of your HOA. I know we put that information on there. However, it also asks in text boxes below, is there a an assessment? So like you might see on the MLS that the HOA is $1,000, but the reality of it, the actual HOA might be $800 and there's a $200 assessment for the next 2 years. And that needs to be noted on there. So that's a document I always send to the sellers at time of listing, so they fill it out and then I attach it to the MLS like you would lead paint and seller's disclosure. Your FHA VA addendum is in here. So if you're working with an FHA client or a VA client and you're writing a buyer's offer, have them fill this out and signed at the time you write the offer, give it to the listing agent, because guess what? If you don't do it, what's gonna happen? The lender's gonna turn around and say, here's our FHA VA document, which is the same thing, and then you're gonna have to send it to everybody to sign. It's always easier to do it up front. Private sewage disposal. This is your septic form. Well testing is in here. Swimming pools. The other big one that I have in here that I always tell agents to do is the solar panel addendum. This is another document I sent to the sellers at time of listing to fill out because it asks, are they owned, are they leased, what's the payment amount, is it monthly, is it quarterly, when did they get it, when's it left? All of this it's easier to send, again, have your sellers fill it out at time of listing and then attach this to the MLS. Because I've gotten it before where there's solar panels. A buyer signs a blank solar panel form, they're signing something they don't even know what the payments are. And then I had to go add all the information back on later. Never have your buyer sign a lead paint doc, an HOA doc, a solar panel doc that is blank. Never. Because then once the sellers sign it and fill out the information, they're signing that whatever was agreed upon, and all of a sudden they may not agree to whatever was written there. Those are documents you always want your buyers to sign after they have been filled out. I still wanna know why I have Louisiana's. Oh, good. They took it away. I used to be able to see all of Louisiana's documents in here, and I still don't to this day know why. Does anybody have any questions about any documents at all? No? No.
There's so much.
I'm gonna go to this screen. Find out. Okay. What the hell? Oh, I did not spell properly. YorkKWLeverage.net. This is my transaction coordinator website. Our services are here, calendars for every market center goes up here. If you need our help, this is where you can put in for a request. Under resources tab, I do have trainings and classes on here, so, they're on here, templates, how to create templates in DocuSign, that's a great class, how to archive opportunities. Some of it's me teaching, some of it's Amanda teaching, so it just depends on what you're looking for, but there's a lot of things in there, listing paperwork, buyer paperwork. Little tips and tricks in DocuSign, so you guys can use this as a point of reference. I don't have a ton of sample documents in here, I used to have a lot more, but then documents changed and over the past year, I have not had the ability to fix them. So. But other than that, I guess that's it.